hands together for the late morning program with your host, Nam.
Russ. Hey, Dina Bandhu.
I'm Russ.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's my pleasure to be here for the late morning program.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is episode 24. This is with Dina Bandhu, Prabhu. Dina, as we know him, our good friend, interesting person. The topic of right now, Dina Bandhu, is coronavirus.
Oh, well.
The big scare.
I don't have a lot of unique perspectives on that, but yeah, people are afraid. People are definitely afraid.
You were telling me earlier, you think that the media is blowing it out of proportion.
I do think that, as they
just speaking
are
to the
known
mic.
to do. They're known to do that, on various issues. But yeah, I do get the sense that, it is a little bit overblown. It's a very intriguing story.
Sure.
The story of the year so far.
I know, right?
No, I am concerned about it. I hope that
in 2012 we thought the Aztec thing was going to happen.
Yes,
and
yes, the end times.
2013, yeah. I don't remember what it was, but then all kinds of things happen every year. Mm-hmm. Something happened, but I think I'm a little
buying bread and milk in the supermarket.
I'm a little scared, to be honest.
No, it is frightening.
Because like some devotees in England got it. I shouldn't be laughing. It's just I'm laughing because it's like. It's scary because it's come so close to home now. Mm-hmm. And then someone in Bergen County got it. I grew up in Bergen County.
Yeah, it's very real.
It's real. Anyways, not many people in America have died from it, right? I think.
Mm-hmm. I think actually none at this stage.
None have died. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's very good. So tell me a little bit about yourself. A lot of people don't know Dina Bandhu inner life. Or historically,
sure.
Tell us about how you got started in, spiritual life.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, spiritual life, in some way or another has always been there. My personal spiritual roots. I grew up in a Jewish household, not particularly observant. Too. Yeah, Tulsi's Jewish too.
Gaurachandra's Jewish also.
By extension, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, Gaurachandra. So. Yeah, so, we grew up in a Jewish household, not particularly observant, but we would go to the synagogue from time to time.
Yeah.
Definitely something that my parents wanted me to have in terms of, sense of heritage. The area where I grew up, very, very few Jewish people, so that was kind of interesting too. Like,
oh, really?
Just always, wanting to have that connection with the tradition, but not really knowing where to find it.
Right.
But I grew up with some spiritual roots in that way. And my parents always taught me to pray, in this very simple way, but just, talk to God. And that always made sense to me. I think, as a kid, I would pray for all kinds of, different possessions, kind of this and this.
I still do that.
Yeah. But, it just...
you don't hear it. No. It's okay. It's okay. It was just the trombone. It went like wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
Like saying that I still pray for possessions and stuff. Anyway, I started to cut you off.
No, it's okay. And then, so I always did pray actually in some way or another.
Yeah.
And it felt natural for me. And regardless of what I was praying for, I got the feeling that there's this relationship. And that was something that sunk in fairly early on.
Really?
Mm.
Wow.
And then, but I never really liked, how would you call it? Just like a formalized religious experience, being there in a service, something like that. And it never felt so natural for me until I was a teenager. And at some point, I suddenly got excited to go to the synagogue to hear more about God, to hear more about spiritual topics. And that kind of spurred on this whole spiritual search. And, it happens with many people, reading different books, exploring different spiritual traditions.
Right.
And for myself, it started with, reading books about Christianity, Buddhism, exploring these different, I read the Quran as well.
What age was that?
This is probably 14.
Oh, wow.
But actually, in terms of the journey with Krishna consciousness, there's actually kind of like a preface there. We go back in time. Before I was kind of interested in all of these spiritual traditions, I was very interested in music, as I still am.
Right.
But my friends and I really loved older music.
Mm.
You know, classic rock. And
Oh, I love
things
classic
like
rock.
that. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I was into. 104.3.
104.3, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking, yeah. So, you know, they're still the foremost source for
Foremost,
classic
the
rock.
source, yes. Maria Melito in the daytime.
Ken Dashow. Yeah.
Right, right.
So we would go to garage sales, right? And we would collect records, you know, LPs.
Yeah.
And it was always like, you know, 50 cents for one, and then or you can give us $2 and take the whole box, you know, like stuff like that. People are desperate to get rid of, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So in one of those instances, my friend and I, his name is Corey, my best friend growing up, we played in bands together and everything.
Uh-huh.
And at this point, we're probably 12 years old, 13, earlier, you know.
Yeah.
And we got one of these boxes of records, and ever so, you know, serendipitously within this box of records was the Radha Krishna Temple album.
All right.
Yeah, which, you know, produced by George Harrison. It's where our Govindam prayers are from that particular collection.
Right.
And Yamuna Devi, all of these wonderful devotees, early devotees are singing there. So anyway, we were like, what in the world is this? You know, it's just something really very,
when you
very
listen
different.
to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we listen to it, and even the cover is, you know, Shri Shri Radha Landanishvara.
Oh, right.
And it was gorgeous to us, very unfamiliar, but very gorgeous. And on some level, you know, deep down, must have been some familiarity there.
Mm.
So I have this unique memory of us standing in his bedroom, listening to the Hare Krishna mantra, you know, a classic tune.
Yeah.
And dancing and chanting. We had no idea what we were doing. And, but just thinking that it was really joyful and beautiful and unusual and special. And so that was a huge, you know, samskar, huge impression. And I later obtained that record from him. It was his.
Yeah.
And somehow we traded, whatever it was. I was just really fascinated. And so when the whole spiritual search came around later, of kind of reading different books and everything, it occurred to me, oh yeah, and don't I have that record of this chanting, this, you know, Hare Krishna thing?
Wow.
And yeah, and then I kind of revisited that. And if you see like the album, the way that the sleeve is and everything, it's all there. You open it up and there's translations of every song. There's a photo of Srila Prabhupada. You know, there's even like portion from his, you know, this Markine Bhagavat Dharma.
Yeah, right.
It's there on the record. Everything's there.
Wow.
You know? In a certain way, it's a really wonderful introduction
Sure.
to Krishna consciousness. So I started reading that, just that album cover. It's kind of like my first book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then from there on out, I kind of felt, okay, you know, this is such beautiful music. I could feel like that joyful, you know, very sincere mood. And I felt like, what did they believe? You know, what do these people believe?
Right.
So I started from there, kind of doing some research. You know, internet, of course, actually played a really big role.
Internet did.
Yeah,
Wow.
in my spiritual journey. Because, yeah, I searched somehow, like just Krishna.com. Like,
Krishna.com.
I went to Krishna.com. I was reading things on Krishna.com.
Uh-huh.
And I started logging on there, reading different things. And then eventually I kind of ordered books. It was so strange. I had this kind of early experience with Krishna consciousness where I had never met any devotees. I'd never gone to a temple. I ordered japa beads on the internet.
What?
I ordered, you know, some of Prabhupada's small books on the internet.
Wow.
Stuff like that. And just kind of gradually started exploring it. And after some time of, you know, reading, especially Sri Ashopanishad,
Oh.
that was like really major for me. I was just very astounded by how beautiful it was.
That's actually not a it's not an easy book to understand.
Something about it. I mean, I think the way it kind of guides you from an impersonal conception toward a personal conception.
Right.
Just in the course of, you know, this fairly small text.
Yes, yes.
That was really influential for me. I just felt like it's describing so eloquently and beautifully
Right.
the nature of the divine.
Right, right.
And yeah, and at that point, I just felt like, Srila Prabhupada's purports, it was also mystical to me. So even if I didn't understand it, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not so easy to just say, okay, yeah, I get it, but it was something that was very mystical, intriguing. I felt like it was something very, very elevated. And that combined with like the early experiences of doing some japa.
And you had just understood how to do japa through the internet.
The internet. There's like this diagram. You guys have probably seen it. Like, it's like there's like some diagram. It's like the outline of a hand, and it's showing the beads, and it has like 1, 2, 3.
Yes, I have seen that. Yeah.
So from that, and it says like this particular one did suggest that you chant the Panchatattva mantra before each round. Everything like that. And I was just doing that.
That's so cool.
And so I would chant just kind of whenever I felt like it. Around here, around there. I don't think at that time I chanted, long periods of time, but I would just chant here and there. And that experience, I really felt something. And I remember just kind of, okay, well, this is something that I should investigate more seriously, at least. I felt that I should really look into this and see what's what. So, yeah, and I had, the spiritual search, I think for me also was just compounded by, a desire to find some deep meaning in the world, as all of us, for all of us.
Right.
There were circumstances at that time. Actually, like looking back on it, the more and more I look back on it, I think actually that September 11th may have played like a big role for me.
Really?
Yeah. Like, not in some extremely heavy way, but just that kind of shook me up in a certain way that
shook everybody up, man.
Everybody
that was a hard time. That changed the world.
It completely changed
the world for everyone.
After that, this whole new score of possibilities had opened up that were not good possibilities.
Right.
Just like a certain fear and a certain kind of like nothing's certain in this world. And of course, we know in truth that's always the case.
Yeah.
But I think at a younger age and in such a visceral, illustrative way, we saw that nothing's certain in this world. So for me, I don't know how old you were at that time. I'm
not good at math, but I think 12. I was 21.
You were 21.
No, I was 16.
16.
Yeah.
It was, I was like 12, 13 years old at that time. And I think that did play a role because here we go, only a few years later, I kind of like looking for answers and everything like that.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, I feel like that played a significant role.
I remember exactly where I was.
Do you?
Not to change the subject so much,
right.
But I was in social studies class, and my friend Brian Gross, whose name I still remember after this many years, he was with me, and we were in the classroom, and people were talking about him, and some kids were like in the hallway screaming because their parents were working in the World Trade Center.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, with us too.
That was so traumatic, and people were like, "Oh, a plane hit the World Trade Center," and I just thought, one of those small planes, one passenger,
some propellers.
Yeah, and it hit that's it, But then when I went, they let us out of school. We went home, and we saw it on TV.
Again,
it was
and
like,
again and again.
Oh my God, over and over again.
Yeah, which
won't get that out of my head.
Yeah, that really formed also a deep impression, I think, for all of us at that time.
Yeah,
seeing that again and again. So
then from that, you said it kind of spurred you more into spiritual life?
It did. I think I didn't identify that at the time.
Right.
But just in looking back on things, I feel it may have, must have played some kind of a role in looking for answers, trying to understand the world on a deeper level, because there are certain things that we just can't make sense of, externally. And so what wound up happening was that, my town, Middletown, which is where I grew up, Middletown, New Jersey.
New Jersey Dom.
New Jersey Dom.
Hashtag New Jersey Dom.
Yes, of course. I mean,
Shout
New Jersey, out. I really feel very attached to New Jersey. I think I'm going to
listen, Dina Bandhu, we can go on about this forever because it's the ever-increasing sweetness of a topic.
Yes, but we want to spare the listeners who may not be able to get on board in the same way.
Brahma Muhurta, we're all from New Jersey, Dom.
It's just,
the Dom Vasis. We can always relish, But let's put that on the side. You were talking about Middletown. Contain, yes. Yeah. We can't let it out because people might criticize, and
Yes. So Middletown actually was the town most affected by September 11th outside of New York. So
really?
In other words, in terms of the number of residents in the particular town who passed away on September 11th was actually Middletown.
No
There's
way.
some figure. I mean, I don't want to quote it 100%.
Really?
But at that time, yeah.
I didn't know that.
And there's even a book that was written called Middletown, America, and it's about the town where I grew up and the way it was affected. So all of these things did play a role. And so after some time of chanting japa and reading Prabhupada's books, just kind of in a vacuum, you know what I mean, at home.
Yeah.
And, logging on to Krishna.com and kind of gleaning what I could, I actually started having some recurring dreams also. I started having dreams about going to a Hare Krishna temple. And it was really inaccurate, you know what I mean, in terms of like what we
And you
now-
hadn't gone to a temple yet?
I had not gone to a temple.
Wow.
So in terms of what we now know a temple to look like, you
Yeah.
know, it was not really accurate. It was
Yeah.
like this, I don't remember. I think there were like lots of cushions all over the floor, which is kind of true, but this is like the entire floor was like a cushion, you know?
Oh, okay.
And like very dimly lit, you know?
Okay.
So anyway, but I had all these dreams, and it seemed like after a while, no matter where I would be going or whatever I was doing in the dream, it would always kind of like steer to going to a temple.
Yeah.
So that also helped me to kind of like take it seriously and say, there's something to this and I really ought to check it out.
Right.
So I ended up going to a home program was the first thing I ever went to in central New Jersey. I just looked up, like Hare Krishna. I may have found Tawako, but I was like a relatively new driver at that time.
Yeah,
It
that's
was, like,
far.
It was far for me. It was
Way
like another
far.
world,
Yeah.
And so
Where the hell is Tawako
yeah,
anyway?
where the hell is Tawako? I was like, what is this? I never heard of this in my life.
Yeah.
But, of course, I did later on go to Tawako, not that long after. But the first thing was a home program in Old Bridge, New Jersey.
Old Bridge, right.
And it was posted on the internet, very like early internet presence of the central New Jersey community. They were
Okay.
kind of just getting going.
Yeah.
And I went to this home program and just showed up. Didn't know who anybody was. Nobody knew who I was.
Yeah.
And they were very, very kind, welcoming, warm, as they still are,
Yes, of
And
course.
it's a lot of the same people, who are now in the community, that I'm actively involved with.
Yeah.
But I just showed up and, it was a wonderful experience. So that was the first time with kirtan, associating with devotees, prasadam.
Yeah.
First prasadam experience also.
How was that?
Oh, monumental. It was great. I think actually growing up, I didn't really enjoy eating. I wasn't someone who was really enthusiastic about food and eating. Somehow this experience, was very different. I mean,
Wow.
we had Indian food before, but this is prasadam,
Did you go with someone or on your own?
completely, just by myself.
What did your parents think?
Yeah. So, so after that, I just wanted to mention, so after that experience, it's the mysterious, what do my parents think? Yeah. So after that, I didn't go back for another 3 months, actually. I had a great experience.
Oh, you didn't go
but
back?
Somehow
Okay.
I just felt like I had to digest it. Maybe it was just such a big thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On a spiritual level that I took a little distance and I was just kind of taking it all in and feeling what it meant to me. But I do remember coming home at the end of the night and feeling okay, this was something major. I don't really know how yet.
Wow.
But this was something really significant.
From the first program?
From the first program, yeah.
Wow.
And so my parents, so my parents have always, I've been very fortunate. My parents have always been very trusting, very open.
Yeah.
So they, for the most part, even from the get-go, kind of trusted me. I think they thought it might be kind of like a phase,
Of course, yeah.
But they were always, my mom, she was more inquisitive about it, asking a lot of questions, kind of okay, what is this about?
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, she learned more about everything in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because she did have a slightly more, not in a negative way, but a slightly more challenging mood. What's the connection here? What do you feel? And my dad has always just been very trusting, kind of well, if it makes you happy, if it's something you like, then, we support you.
I'd love to meet your parents. They seem...
They would love to meet you,
Because when you meet someone's child or someone's son, you kind of get an idea what the parents must be like. But they're more magnified than the person you're meeting. You know, you can see the qualities of the child with the parents. You know,
you connect
now
the
that I'm a
dots,
father
yeah.
and I understand, like I see certain things in my son that your parents will be so super nice people because
They're
you're such
lovely
a
people. They're sweet.
you're such a nice person. So I thought your parents must be amazing
They're
people. I love to meet them.
they're very good. They're very good. They
I
live
should
in
have them on the
Georgia now.
show. They're what?
They live in Georgia now.
Oh, really?
actually,
They don't live it. They left the Dom.
They left the Dom. Their spiritual bank account, like, you know, it was spent, and yeah, you know, but it's good. They're not as stressed out anymore.
Better weather, for sure.
Better weather.
Are they
simpler
very
life.
old or?
No. They're no. My dad is 69 years old. My
Okay.
mom, slightly younger than that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So they're living in Georgia now.
Living in Georgia. But yeah, they were always cool. They made it, you know, in that sense, you know, a lot of people who get involved with a particular spiritual path, you know, that is not the one that they were born into. They face a lot of challenges in terms of, you know, disapproval or people, you know, challenging it. And I was very fortunate that I didn't really experience that you know, from my family. No.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one younger sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
What does she think?
She just always knew it. I mean, so I guess I was like 16 at that time.
Yeah.
And so she's 5 years younger than me, so she would have been 11. And it's just kind of like, oh yeah, my brother and like his stuff that he does. Like,
What about now?
like, he's ringing bells. What is he doing?
Oh my God.
So, but yeah, now, so anyway, it's interesting. The times have kind of caught up in a certain way because my sister is vegan and she's a yoga instructor.
No way. How
So
cool.
Somehow it just happened like that. She just felt that kind of life was so much more positive for her.
Yeah.
So as far as the spiritual substance of it, I mean, it's something that she's open to, but I think it's still, there's that sibling thing where like, it's my thing.
It's your,
always
it's
been
your
my
thing. Yeah.
So, but yeah, she was always very supportive too. And she's been, my whole family's been to the temples and everything like that.
Super
different
cool.
times, you know.
Super cool. And then so as you got older, when did you kind of really, when was like turning point when you like were like, okay, I'm going to commit now?
Yeah. So what that was for me, actually, so when I first connected, I was in high school. And I guess I would have been a junior in high school when I first started going to the temple.
Yeah.
And I was going regularly by the end of high school. But then there's this whole, you know, I went away for college.
Right.
I went to Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it was, you know, it was a distance away from home, away from the community. But I did feel this desire to kind of connect with the spiritual community and,
Right.
you know, find the devotees, you know, basically. So the closest community was in Cleveland. And it was a home program, but it was like a steady home program every Wednesday, every Wednesday evening. So that was really nice too, because I went to this very small college and it was like a real bubble of a college town. And so to be able to, like, you know, leave every Wednesday and spend time with the community in a different place, and it kind of expanded my world. So it was very much welcome in that way. But during that time, there was one devotee who, well, I made some good friends. My friend Srimala Prabhu, he lives in Cleveland, wonderful, and his wife Kunjari, they're very sweet devotees, and they would pick me up from college. I didn't have a car, and they would drive me, and he would go out of his way to bring me to the temple and everything like that. It was amazing. And at some point, there's this devotee named Jatayu Prabhu, senior devotee, and he started driving me home at some point. He took up that, you know, very, very kind, you know, offer to drive me home. And he's a very quiet person. So we would just drive, and then like all of a sudden he would just like share like these like gems, you know, like he kind of lean over in the truck and say, like, you know, Krishna consciousness is very, very important that you form relationships with devotees, you know, things like that.
Oh,
like
yeah. I love those kind of devotees.
I love it.
They share things with you?
Just like these
Like
little
randomly.
things. Randomly.
Oh, I love that.
I didn't have to look for it. That's real mercy too,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not something that I had to really seek for. It was just like freely flowing.
Wow.
And he, so yeah, and you know, but gradually he was quiet in the beginning, and then we started to develop this very wonderful friendship. And he has an interesting story, if I can tell.
Sure, please.
So he
Is he still around?
He's not. He's not.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
not.
he actually left his body. He passed away in 2015,
Oh, okay.
which is also significant.
Oh, okay.
But he joined very, very early on, got involved in like 1969
Oh, wow.
in Cleveland, Radha Muralidhar.
Oh,
You know?
really?
Radha Muralidhar were in Cleveland
The
first.
DDs that are now at the Bhakti
At the
Center.
Bhakti Center. Yep.
Because they were in Cleveland before.
They were in Cleveland before. So he got involved in the late 60s. He traveled to India with Srila Prabhupada and with the devotees at that time, 75, 76, you know, like that period of time.
Right.
So he was there, but he never ended up being initiated by Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, he was later initiated, and he always had this very strong, you know, connection with Prabhupada, because that's how it all started for him, and that's, you know, who he saw always as, you know, his spiritual master.
Right.
So he also really helped me to feel that connection as well, like to kind of really flesh out like the full personhood of Srila Prabhupada. You know, really, give me glimpses into his personality, everything like that.
Wow.
So, but the friendship that we formed was tremendously influential, because he was such an elevated person spiritually, but he approached me in the mood of a friend, which I guess was just what I really needed at that time.
Right.
I didn't have any kind of like reverential attitude. I think at that time it was more just kind of like, okay, you know, I'm here in this community. And so he would always come and spend time with me in college. Like we would walk around, we would go japa walks, everything like that. And we ended up starting a program together once a week. It was like a kirtan program that we would do in this big chapel. It was like this big stone chapel, very beautiful, an incredible echo.
Oh, okay.
And so we would do kirtans there for the students and everything like that. And there's a Rath Yatra on the college campus that still happens, actually.
What's the college again?
Oberlin College.
Oh,
It's
Oberlin,
like a
okay.
small art
I've
school.
heard of it.
Yeah, it's funny. Like these days, it's considered to be like an intensely kind of like liberal place. So it comes up in the news sometimes. You know, for those.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, we started this Rath Yatra there, and
You guys started it.
well, he started it, you know, but he allowed me to, you know,
Cool.
help out, and you know, so the first time it happened, it's part of this big community parade, and then we started coming. Doing
Oh, it's a
Rath
part of a
Yatra as
parade.
Part
Okay.
of the parade.
Nice, nice. Yeah.
And it still goes on. But anyway, to share just about him, I feel he really helped me to, you know, to answer your question of what made me kind of feel like, okay, I'm going to commit to this now.
Yeah.
Because he gave me such a wonderful vision of what it really means to live the philosophy, to live the teachings
Yeah.
in a very, very human, very honest, but very, very profound way. You know, he lived his life, you know, he was just always, you know, chanting, always absorbed in the teachings, but in a way that like felt so natural and felt so real. You know, I could feel how much he was deriving from it, how much it fueled him in his life. So for me, it was like just maybe the first really potent illustration of like what it means to live a spiritual life beyond kind of like considerations of, you know, I go to the temple, you know, X number of times, or I do these practices, like really just that he was living and breathing it all the time. So
Wow.
in a very inspiring way, you know, that made a big impression on me.
Wow, that's amazing. So then you developed this friendship with him, and then did you eventually move back to New Jersey?
Yeah, I moved back to New Jersey, and we stayed in touch. We would always keep in touch. He visited a number of times. He would come always for like New York Rath Yatra.
Oh,
he would come
really?
and stay with me.
Wonderful.
And it was just great. So what I can tell just about, he left his body kind of very suddenly.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah, he had a cancerous tumor
Okay.
that he didn't know about, you know,
Oh.
that nobody knew about. And it happened very quickly. And at that time I was touring around the country. I was touring as a musician, and I was in California when I heard that, things were, in a bad place with him, his health.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being able to go there to Ohio. And I was kind of with him for the last 10 days of his life. And that was just an extremely profound experience, like the idea that when there are people who come into our lives who are always teaching us,
Mm-hmm.
they're also teaching us, at their time of leaving.
Of course, yeah.
And yeah,
Wow.
really, really felt that. And I felt so fortunate to be able to be there. And that ended up just making a huge impression also. That also led me toward the kind of work that I'm doing these days, also was influenced by that.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to get into that as well.
Because, just a lot with, I always had this I always had a feeling that it would be extremely meaningful to be with people, at times of, dying and death.
Right. You're a chaplain.
Yes.
What kind of chaplain is that? Is that called exactly?
So there are different types, but this would just be like a hospital chaplain.
Right.
Particularly, with people who are leaving, that would be hospice chaplains.
Hospice, right. You've done that before, but now you're working on something else, right?
Yes. So, but yeah, just to say that, yeah. So with Jatayu Prabhu, that experience was huge for me in terms of, that was something that I always had in the back of my mind as something that might be a meaningful thing to do. But being there with him as my friend, as my Shiksha Guru, and feeling like, okay, it's possible. This is something that's possible, because we worry that, maybe we wouldn't be able to even handle something like that. you
Yeah.
know? So I feel like that was another kind of gift that I was able to receive from him.
Wow.
That lesson. But yeah, these days I'm doing this chaplaincy work. I'm currently, my main involvement is at a psychiatric hospital,
Right.
here in New Jersey, and that is it's intense, but
Gosh, it must be
It's just-
intense. I mean, our other friend that's doing that, he's just training, and he told me, he just came from there. He had me help me. I called him over to help me with something. He said, I was with somebody, and half an hour later they died.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, isn't that intense? Like you should bring a shalagram with you or something, because if they're near, it says if you die within some radius of a shalagram shila, you go to Vaikuntha or something.
Wow.
I mean, I was thinking of those practical things, but I was just thinking also, like, mentally, like, gosh, it must be so, like, I don't know, it just weighs on someone heavily. Like, what's your experience like, knowing, okay, this person's could die in the next 5 minutes or something?
I think it's wonderful that you were thinking of their spiritual welfare like that. That you do what
Well,
you can to.
yeah, you try to do what you can.
That is what we do. I mean, even if it's in some silent way,
Right,
praying within the heart and trying to really, pray that person has, auspicious passage.
Right.
So, sorry, your question?
My question was, how do you deal with that? That kind of, doesn't it weigh down on someone who, you're seeing that so much, death. You're seeing so much of death.
Yeah,
and suffering.
Yeah.
In the psychiatric hospital,
there's not as much dying, but it does happen,
right,
from time to time. But yeah, the suffering is.
How do you deal with that? I mean, my son's crying a little bit, and I get all like, oh, is he okay? Like, what's happening? Like, I don't like to see suffering and stuff, but you see it on a daily basis.
It is, it is hard. I mean, there's no way around it. It is hard. It is intense. But I think in a certain way, well, with death, we come to realize that this is just, I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. Cliches are cliches because they're true. But but death is a part of life,
Yeah.
right? So, and you see so many unique, different experiences in terms of, it's true what, what's there in the Bhagavad Gita about, the state of being, one is in, they attain that, you even see that in the moment because, you see people who are very, very much at ease at the time of leaving.
Oh, you see that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you do see it. You see that people are at peace. They feel that they have their things in order. They're grateful.
They live their life to their fullest, they could say.
They're grateful. They're accepting.
Wow.
And a death like that is not so traumatic to witness because you feel like, okay, this person is in, they're in a good place with it.
Yeah.
And then you see things that are really on the opposite end of the spectrum, That's, I don't want to be, too heavy, but I mean, but people who, they're not accepting it, they're denying it, they're afraid of it.
Up till the end.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Sure.
Amazing.
I mean, of course you hope and pray. And also as chaplains, we also want to do whatever we possibly can to help someone in a situation like that and hopefully help to ease things. But if someone is truly in that place, sometimes it can be very hard.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so the way that I handle it though is, you see the soul within each person. You try to the best of your ability to see the soul within each person. You know that there's a plan for them, that there's a particular path for them, and that this is part of their journey. And it's a privilege to be there with them at that time, in that moment, and to also have a prayerful heart for that person in that moment. And it does sober us up in so many ways, just on a personal level, seeing these things, because it's very, very interesting how, at least in America or in many, I think, many countries, I think in the West largely, death is hidden.
Yeah.
It's hidden away. In hospitals. And also, like in my day-to-day work, I can say that people who have severe mental illness are often hidden away. So there are these whole worlds that are kind of, it's part of life. It's something that's really, really out there, but it's very strategically kind of cloistered. So these are wondrous experiences to kind of, to witness all of this. And like the people who I work with every day, a lot of the people in the psychiatric hospital, they're just such brilliant, amazing, unique, incredible people. I mean, and also often very, very spiritual.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
That's shocking.
People who, well, if you think about it, a lot of the people have had experiences in which they felt that their entire way of seeing the world got turned upside down. Their whole perception of things, the way they understand the world, the way they understand themselves, has been shifted.
Right.
And for some people, that can be a very traumatic experience. For some people, that's, in the immediate sense, what places them in the situation of having to be in the hospital. But then there's so much you can unpack from that. You may talk to them and they'll tell you about things that they've been through, and they'll say like, well, that's when everything changed for me. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? And often they'll just come out with incredibly deep, profound spiritual things, about just how they understood, they were living their life in a particular way, and all of a sudden they understood it in a whole new way, and they can never see the world in the same way after that, so it's kind of, usually within that is a very deep truth, whether it's about suffering or whether it's about, the brilliance that they see in other people, right, and how they appreciate that so much. Anyway, they're just, you're dealing a lot with shifts in perspective.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing to, hear about and to talk about with people.
Did you see The Joker?
I actually did not.
You didn't?
I did not. Should I?
You should. I recently saw it on the airplane back from Chicago. I was with Brahma Muhurta. and we were doing a puja in Chicago, and we came back, and I saw it, and I was blown away. Honestly, it was it has a lot to do with mental health. The whole movie, and it just shows like the downward spiral of someone who didn't treat it properly and stuff, and he just turns into this murderer or whatever. But it was just really well done, and there were times where it was like very kind of ghastly scenes and things, but the way it expressed kind of like that mental health thing was really interesting, very interesting. And as someone yourself who's working with people in that department, I think you should see it. I think it was very good. But so let's step back a little bit. So then after you left Ohio and you came back to New Jersey, then you said you traveled America? Tell us about that.
Sure. So
as a musician,
there were some interesting times after.
I know,
after
and also
college.
you worked with some famous people at fashion something
company.
Tell
I didn't know. Funny chapters,
Yeah, tell us about that.
So when I first came back from college, I didn't know. I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I was a student of religion and creative writing, so it's not like. It's not the big career areas. Yes, that's it. I heard it this time. Yeah.
History. I have a history degree.
History degree.
Yeah.
You're doing all right.
I'm doing okay. I didn't use it, but it's cool to tell people.
So I came back and I'm like, I got a degree in religion and creative writing. So then first job I had, so the first thing right after college was I went in the ashram at the Bhakti Center.
Right.
That's when you and I think, first met.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Okay. And I was living in the ashram, I think, at the time.
Yeah, I think we might have just passed each other where you were toward your end of your time there and I was starting.
Okay.
And dear friend Hari Prasad Prabhu, he really kind of made that arrangement for me. I always wanted to experience ashram life and have that kind of training.
Hari Prasad, man. And I got to have him on the show, too. He's interesting.
That would be great.
I should have both of you together. That would be fun.
Oh, hey. I would just want to stay out of the way, though, because he has a lot of good stuff to say.
Yeah.
And so I spent a short period of time, and it was just, for myself, I always kind of felt like it was more natural for me to go into family life. And I kind of knew that at that time too. So this was just something I really wanted to have, that training. I wanted to have that experience.
Sure.
And so then after that, I was actually driving a taxi.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jayananda Prabhu style.
Well, yeah, he did. He did drive a taxi.
Yeah.
And so I was driving a taxi and just kind of talking to people. That actually ended up being a thing, that worked in the direction of the chaplaincy work, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because, having these talks with people, it's this anonymous thing, they don't know if they're ever going to see you again. And people, sometimes they just really pour their heart out. So that was fascinating.
Where did you
drive? I was in New
taxi?
Jersey, in my hometown.
Okay.
In Middletown. But,
okay.
In and around that area.
Yeah.
And the occasional, trip someone wants you to drive to, Long Island or Connecticut or something,
super
kind of
long,
a little further.
Yeah.
And then you get to really have these talks. So that was an interesting chapter. I actually really liked that. If it were a financially feasible, thing, it can be hard, to make a living from that. But I actually really did enjoy it. So the traveling was. Then after that was the fashion thing. So I wound up somehow working for this clothing company called Rag and Bone. It's like a very kind of fancy fashion company in New York. I was really in need of work at that time. I was working at this record store that was my first job.
Mm-hmm.
My first job was at the record store when I was in high school. And they've always been very, very kind. I stayed friends with all the people there. And whenever I'm needing some, work or, it's kind of an in-between stage, they've always let me come back and work there.
Oh, that's nice.
So what wound up happening is one friend there, he knew this guy who was a fashion photographer.
Yeah.
And he said he kind of needs someone to assist him. In New York, they have a Fashion Week.
Fashion Week, yeah.
Yeah. So he needed someone to assist him for Fashion Week. So I started taking photos, and I was helping him out with the photography and everything. And that ended up leading to a job, completely unrelated job, but for this fashion company. I formed like nice connection with the people there.
Yeah.
And I was not shy about telling them that I could really use some work at that time. And I ended up going into product development for this company.
Wow.
Yeah. Mostly with like zippers, they call it in the fashion. This is not interesting, so I'm not going to dwell on it for too long. But in the fashion industry, it's called trim. So you have like the fabric, and you have like all the buttons and snaps and zippers, all of like the little components of the garment.
Yeah. I like your shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Uniqlo?
No, I got
Mine's
it in a thrift store, actually. I don't know.
Oh, really? Something Bay.
I think it was from JCPenney
Nice.
or
Very nice.
something. But anyway, so so
You're talking about
I was
trim.
in charge of the trims. So the
That's what you were in
zippers
charge
and
of?
everything. Yeah. So
That's amazing.
it was interesting. They sent me to the garment district at first, so like this old school kind of cutting room where people are cutting the fabrics and everything. But then I wound up, moving into like the main facility there, and I was working with the fashion designers. So they had these ideas of like, oh, well, we need a red button for this shirt. They're developing developing the products.
It's so awesome.
And so, I worked for that company for a while, and it was good because I had like a student loan debt and everything, that can be very heavy. So that was something I wanted to work very hard. So I worked for that company for a while, and then after that, my real heart's, passion at that time was songwriting and touring. So I would do little tours, where you book from, one city to another. It's usually fairly small, engagement, but you arrange it so that each night you have a different performance. And that's something that I was able to do for a while, kind of as like the main involvement. And
Just you by yourself?
So it would be with different friends who also have their own kind of solo performance, and we would team up, and so it would be like we would not play together, but we would play one after the other.
Oh, cool.
And that was like the event, for each night. And then there's always some local band or local performer who joins also.
And what type of
gets
music?
more people to come. It was like folk music.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so kind of like guitar and
You did like
singing.
a bit of everything, Dina.
Somehow I just tried to do different things, and that's something that still is significant to me. The creative side of things, I
Sure.
think it's very much intertwined with bhakti, because art is a very natural extension of bhakti. Because when you want to do something, as nicely as possible, that comes from devotion, that comes from love.
Yeah.
And when you do something as nicely as possible, you try to do it in your own way as nicely as possible, whatever that is, whether it's cooking or whether it's writing or singing or anything like that, that becomes art. So it's like when you try to do something as nicely as possible out of love,
Well put.
it becomes art. So
Yeah.
So anyway, art is irremovable from
Yeah.
spiritual life, So,
Amazing.
yeah. So and then
Then after that,
so now we've come full circle. So then after that, I went to Ohio. So I was touring in California, and then that's when I found out that Chaitanya Prabhu was leaving his body.
Right.
And I went back to Ohio to be with him at that time. Yeah.
And then you came back to New Jersey.
I landed back in New Jersey, and I didn't have a job because, I had been doing all the touring and everything, and that also was like a pretty natural end point for that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And then did you go into the chaplaincy thing then?
Mm-hmm. And then I basically went into the chaplaincy thing.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, so a lot of people nowadays say that, Western devotees are not joining because the kind of the paradigm of ISKCON North America is very much Indian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know, someone like you, Western person,
Yeah.
what was your experience like joining a temple and that first home program you went to in Old Bridge,
Yes.
it must have been a lot of Indian devotees.
Yeah, I would say 95%.
Okay.
I was not the only Western person there.
Sure.
But yeah, very, very, very few.
Did that because I also noticed that people who might join in that sort of way, after a while they might fall away because they don't feel like a relation. They don't feel like they can relate because of different culture, different race, different something. So tell us your experience about how you kind of navigated that, or did you even have to?
Sure. So it was interesting because in a way, I had very, very little frame of reference for what it was supposed to be like to go to a temple.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So, and, New Jersey being a place that has, also very notable and significant areas with like very concentrated Indian population.
Right.
I was just feeling like, okay, well, it makes sense. This is a Hare Krishna temple, and I'm here, and most of the people are Indian. And I didn't really have a frame of reference outside of that. I just felt like, okay, so this is what it's like to go to a temple. So that was my initial impression, and I was fine with that. I felt like they were extremely welcoming to me. I also didn't really feel like I was too much of like an object of attraction for people. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like people were like really trying to, preach to me or anything like that.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
I felt like, yeah, maybe because they saw that I liked chanting and everything like that,
Right.
But I just felt like I was very much welcomed there. Of course, on some level I noticed, that, that most of the people there are Indian.
Right.
But yeah, so what I would say is that I didn't feel this need of like, oh, it should be more Western people. There should be more white people here, or whatever it is.
Right.
But it just felt like, okay, well, these people are very kind to, let me be here, and to, I felt like that in a certain way, and I felt also that it was something that I didn't realize until later, actually. I realized when I was in Ohio, because when I was in Ohio, the community happened to be mostly Western.
Right.
But you mentioned, about people falling away and things like that, people feeling like they can't relate culturally.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, because that is a very genuine concern. And
Yeah.
I feel like we have our spiritual culture, and then there may be certain like external cultural differences,
Right.
So for me, even now, I mean, the community that of course I'm connected in New York also, and, I have devotee friends who are coming from all different backgrounds.
Sure.
But the main temple that I still attend very regularly is the same actually group of people who I first connected with. So it's still a very, very largely Indian congregation.
Yeah.
But it's how wonderful, right? That we don't have to allow the externals to define our relationship.
Yes.
Like, because there are people who like, okay, like I can own up, of course, like externally, we have very little in common. People who, even in terms of age, right? So there may be,
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
like, there may be someone who's, in their 60s, or,
yeah.
Whatever it is, they work in, they work as an engineer or
Doctor.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And there's very little for us to kind of connect about, in that sense. But how wonderful that externally there's such a difference, and it looks very different, right? But internally, in our hearts, we have like the very same ultimate goal. Like,
Beautiful.
So for me, that's so cool. And like, in a way, that's actually more interesting. Sometimes for me to hang around with people who just like, I experienced that in college. To be around people who had like all of my same kind of material interests, and and there's a place for that, of course. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, I feel like if we can emphasize those loving connections and the fact that actually we're holding in our hearts the same like jewel of a goal. And
Yeah.
then like you can really celebrate that. Wow, I'm dancing with like this guy who otherwise if I met him on the street, like we would have nothing in common,
Yeah.
you know? Although I like to believe that we all have something in common, of course. Like, but
Right.
you know what I mean? Externally, we'd be so different and may not have so much to connect over. But here, now, like we're just really in this together. And even though, you know, our lives are very different, you know, on
Beautifully
the outside.
put. Beautifully put. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because there's this, and no, what about also? I want to ask you, like, some people have issues with the dress,
Mhm.
whether it's dhoti or and kurta, and then the kind of cultural things of Krishna consciousness, like. Sometimes we're trying to get rid of that to kind of like attract Westerners to come. I think there's a place for that.
Yeah, I think there can be a place for that. Yeah, because like what I was going to say is that actually, this is look what I just said now. You know that I haven't experienced that strong tension, that strong cultural tension. I just consider that, you know, my good fortune and maybe also like the result of the warmth and the love and care of the devotees.
Right.
You know, but I would never kind of like write off somebody who feels like, oh, I can't connect culturally. I think that those people, they should do whatever fuels them in spiritual life, whatever makes them want to, you know, go deeper
Right.
in their practice. So if that's connecting with a community that maybe is a little bit more culturally compatible for them or something like that, I think there is a place for that.
Totally. Totally.
But yeah, the dress thing, yeah, for me, many years actually. I mean, for maybe the first 5 years or something that I was connected with the temple, I was not regularly wearing any kind of traditional clothing.
Yeah.
Maybe for a festival, something like that.
Right.
But it was not something major for me. And yeah, at some point, also like, you know, for me, when you start getting involved with certain services that require that you dress in that way.
Right.
So
You're a pujari.
doing some service, you know, for the deity,
Sure.
whatever it is.
Right.
Then for me, there's a very functional aspect there.
Of course.
Dressing like that for a particular reason, for cleanliness and for also respecting that tradition, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, I think that people who feel that the dress doesn't make sense for them, then yeah, they shouldn't be, you know, in a certain way, you know, they shouldn't be, of course they shouldn't be pressured to
Sure.
dress in that way.
Sure.
And I felt that I feel that I never was.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very funny. I can think of, there's one devotee who I'm very friendly with in the Central New Jersey temple, and he's, as I described, like older gentleman who is from an Indian background, and once in a while I will show up at the temple, you know, not wearing the traditional dress and everything, and he'll look at me like, he kind of goes like that. And it's become a joke for us, actually.
Oh,
like, I know that like it doesn't, he's not coming down on me in some serious way.
Yeah.
Like, he's just noticing. And at first I felt kind of like,
Oh, no.
like, you know, I don't want to like offend anybody. You know, I would be like, well, I was somewhere before. You know? Like I was in the store, you know, whatever, before I came here. But now it's become this thing where he'll just kind of go like, and then I'll go like, you know, it's like this kind of, you know, it's a sweet
Rasa
exchange, you know. And yeah, I feel like for people to wear what feels comfortable for them, if it's a distraction for them, something like that. But you know, I think there also is a certain kind of respect for the tradition. If you have a particular service that demands a certain kind of dress,
Yeah.
there's a place for that too. Yeah, but I mean, for me personally, it was never like a big issue.
I think it has to do a lot with your personality as well. You're very kind and super nice. Like, I don't know. Yeah. And I liked what you said. It's about, you know, it's about you connecting with these devotees on a deeper level from the inside. You know that there's a similarity there, and these are just external things. I think that's looking at the essence. I think that's like, what did Sridhar Maharaj say? Form substance over form.
Substance over form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always an opportunity to like delve into that substance.
The substance is very important.
Only challenge to that is sometimes we require time to do that. And it's like we were talking about, sometimes it can be really difficult, even if there's someone who you feel like a really kindred connection with.
Yeah.
In the course of a temple program or something like that, it can be hard sometimes. Everyone has their service, there are different things that they're doing.
Yeah.
And they need a chance to really connect in a high quality way. It doesn't always come, regularly. You have to really like make the time for that. And I was just thinking, there's something I really, really appreciated recently. There's someone a young person in our temple, like probably 17, came up to me the other day, and we were talking, and it started as just kind of like, "Hi, Paul, how are you?" And then, the question came, "How's your Krishna consciousness?"
He asked you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought that was so good.
Yeah.
I thought that was so great.
Wow.
How's your Krishna consciousness? And it's like really caring. I felt the care. So I was just saying, thank you so much for asking me that. And like, yeah, it's just great if in some way, even if we have kind of these quick passing encounters, that we can somehow infuse that with like that kind of care and like, really genuine concern for each other.
Did you ever have any opportunities or any desire to get into any leadership roles? I think you're a perfect person for that.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can only just take that.
No. Honestly, you have that right mood.
That to wash over me.
You have this mood that it's very unique and it's very refreshing.
Oh, thanks. No,
you're very positive. I love your positivity. I absolutely love it.
I find you to be a really positive
Me
person.
positive?
Yeah, you're smiling. You're
No.
laughing.
Listen.
Energy.
I'm a very negative person. We talk a little bit more. I tend to see the cup is half empty type of thing. But whenever I talk to you, you're always like, the cup is half full, man. What are you talking about? But going towards the future, I would say one of the topics I'm really interested about is ISKCON succession and ISKCON, what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
So,
and I do think about that.
Tell me a little bit. What's your thoughts on things like that?
Well, I can't. Well, just straight out the gate, I can't claim to have any kind of authority on it because I haven't.
Of course,
I haven't taken up any substantial kind of responsibilities. But what I think about is that inevitably we do have to start preparing for that in whatever way possible. And I think a big part of that is spending time with the wonderful senior, kind of elevated personalities who are around us. We're very, very fortunate that we've kind of come in contact with all of this so much in the beginning, actually, like historically speaking. We're at the very beginning, like Srila Prabhupada, he was physically present. It wasn't that long ago, you know what I mean? And it may feel long ago for us. It may feel like a completely different era,
Yeah,
but we're so fortunate, right? That we're
that long
still,
ago.
Our spiritual masters, different devotees who we get to come in contact with, right? They have so much to give.
Yeah.
And they've surrendered so much to kind of take up responsibilities, and move things forward. So I just think about that, like really trying to drink in that association and to just hear and ask questions and be sincere. But also, anyway, I don't want to go into like a big topic, but but sometimes I think about things like social media and things like that, how previous generation, right? They didn't come up with social media. They didn't kind of get into their spiritual life alongside something like social media.
Yeah, right.
Whereas we are.
Yeah. Interesting.
And sometimes I feel like that may place us in a situation where we feel like this kind of it comes up in social media, right? It kind of argumentative kind of things and different kinds of very disparaging things come up.
Yeah.
And I got to the point, like, just where for me personally, like, I found it kind of discouraging, and I feel like the succession thing is something that sometimes pops into my head when I see like really contentious debates going on and things like that. And this is in no way to talk down on anybody. Like everybody has, strong opinions, and everyone kind of works things out in their own way.
Sure.
But sometimes I think about that too, that, if we're always witnessing exchanges is like that, which isn't to say that like the previous era was like this picture perfect thing, but just that we can somehow put ourselves in like this frame of mind where like, how can we actually try to be caring, like really care for each other, move forward, and so
that's a great realization.
That's something that I think about, that like I think sometimes when we are in that kind of a space, we're thinking about, well, the grown-ups are here, right? Like the people are here who are really taking care of things, But yeah, like in the conversations that you've had, there's this idea that, eventually we're going to have to take on more responsibilities. And I think a place like the Bhakti Center, just to offer my like respect and appreciation also, so many of the people there who are serving and are taking major responsibilities, they're quite young.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's
they're our age.
That's so inspiring. I love seeing that,
Yeah.
So that's just really uplifting to see. And it's nice to see it in practice. But one other thing is just that, we can have these experiences now, actually, like, when we're spending time with people who are mostly in our own age group and kind of in a similar space in spiritual life.
Yeah.
And to realize that no one's forcing us to do that, right? That actually we're all there voluntarily, whether it's like having kirtan, reading something, speaking about some spiritual topic. That's a nice feeling, right? To realize that, by our own volition, by our own inspiration, we're cultivating this sangha and this space and time together, and that's a really nice thing. So I think that that's something that we can like take note of more frequently, also like when we're doing that, and to really just let that sink in. This is out of our own desire, and this is out of our own inspiration that this is happening. Of course, the inspiration's coming from so many others before.
Yeah.
But that it's sinking in.
Right. Right. Yeah, that definitely is a good point. The future of North American ISKCON. A lot of devotees say that there's going to be there's a decline happening. Of course, I see the decline in the sense of the amount of people joining and the amount of people, the growth is definitely stunted at the moment. What do you think is the way forward for spreading Krishna consciousness in North America, particularly in North America? You're a person who grew up here, like me.
Yeah.
But so we have this unique kind of finger on the pulse of and you're a regular working person, so what people are like, what people are attracted to, or what kind of things are, because like I work with a lot of young people now. Before I work with a lot of old people in my job, but now I work with young people, and I just see what people are like kind of right now, in the sense of where they're spiritually, if there's any attraction or and there is definitely. I mean, people are more into yoga, people are more into veganism, people more like are environmentalists and things like that. So just to my previous question, what do you think is the way forward?
Yeah. So there are many very forward-thinking, novel, interesting kind of approaches out there that people are already starting to pioneer, different ideas. One thing that popped into my head when you asked me this is, I think it's just one thing that we kind of underestimate sometimes, because I think sometimes we feel like so much of it has to be in the presentation, and presentation it's super important. Yeah. Of course, presentation is super important because people operate on first impressions. Yeah. If they see something and they're not into it, they're like, all right, this is like
ragtag group or something.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's just like I feel like people can be a little cynical, and if they see something that just doesn't resonate for them, they'll just say, okay, well, I'll carry on to the next thing. But So sometimes we spend so much time and energy thinking of like a really attractive presentation.
Yes, yes.
But also, we should never, ever underestimate just the power of providing a space where people can come in and have really genuine, honest, real exchanges, like loving exchanges, and to be heard, to be listened to make eye contact. These are all things, I'm telling you, because I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, you know, if someone comes up to you in the street and like is asking you a question or something, sometimes if you make eye contact with them, they're like stunned.
Really?
People are stunned by eye contact.
Really?
You know, because we're always, you know, or this or the phone or whatever it is, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in the modern age, sometimes we just bypass each other.
Yeah.
So if they're...
I'm trying to make eye contact with you right now.
I also read an article recently that if you make eye contact with someone for 10 minutes straight,
Yeah?
you start to have some kind of like you have some kind of altered state of consciousness or something like that. I was reading
Really?
that. Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, you know, the idea that if you just provide a space where people can come in and really offer like their full self, because we also become so compartmentalized. I think even in spiritual companies, sometimes we become compartmentalized. Okay, I'm going to be spiritual Dina now, or I'm going to be this, that, and the other. So if people can have a space to offer like their real self and to feel complete, to feel like they can offer their concerns and their fears and their frustrations about the world, offer the things that really give them life, things that make them feel so uplifted.
Wow.
So that, even just for someone to be heard and to really have meaningful exchanges of the heart, that's actually like, it's really not a small thing. That's something that's actually really rare.
Wow.
Especially in a kind of community space.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if I could add any 2 cents, it's just, I mean, there are different novel techniques and things like that, and I do think about those things. But something that no matter what it is we're doing, whatever kind of outreach or whatever kind of space we're trying to offer people, let it be a place where they can actually really share themselves fully. They can make eye contact. They can have meaningful, exchanges with people, and to not feel overly judged or to feel like they have to be this way or that way. I think a lot about Srila Prabhupada in the beginning at 26 Second Avenue. It was an interesting group of people who came in. You know what I mean? They were artists and they were musicians and they were kind of coming from all different kinds of philosophies that they were working with and trying to process. And I feel like sometimes we can be too quick to kind of, like if someone comes in with some idea that's a little contrary to ours or something like that, we can say like, well, no, our philosophy says this, or whatever it is. But just first, let someone share their outlook on life, even if it doesn't resonate for us, something like that, because then they feel very seen and they feel very understood according to like what really means something to them at that moment.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's just one thing I can think about for the future of North America. I don't think it's only a North American ideal, but I think it's something that people in North America certainly are looking for, to be able to feel to feel that they have a space where they can really be themselves in full. Like, not that they can only show you their nice side or they can only show you this, that, or the other.
It's a vulnerable state, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a vulnerable state. But a lot of the time the vulnerability comes from feeling like it won't be received in the right spirit. It's vulnerable initially.
Right.
But then if there's an opportunity, to share it and feel understood, then it becomes less and less vulnerable. I think also we have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Not that we are so much the ones who have all the answers, People bond a lot over the questions more than the answers, right? So like rather than like, okay, you have these questions now, we'll give all of the answers. It's kind of like talk about what it feels like to have that question, or when you had that question, whatever it is. Yeah.
Wow,
And there are a lot
brilliant.
of people out there who are doing these things, but it's just seems to me that that's a significant part
Yeah,
of the approach.
I think a lot about I do think presentation is important, but I think sometimes we do get definitely caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
In trying to make calculations about the presentation, about like, okay, if we don't wear a bead bag, then we're gonna get X amount of people. If we do wear a bead bag, then we're gonna get this less amount, or this person may not be. And I think that comes from a good place.
Yeah.
That people want to do
It's a
that.
sensitivity.
Yeah, it's a sensitivity. But when you overly analyze and you kind of miss the point, then because the point being, let's get people to hear the holy name. Let's get people to eat prasadam. Let's get people to hear some, harikatha or something, and let's get people to associate with devotees, and let that magic, so to say, happen to them on its own.
Yeah, and to do it in a way that is natural for you, because I feel like people can spot like from a mile away, if you're doing something that doesn't really feel genuine for you, so if you do something that actually feels exciting and feels real for you and feels like you're stepping into it in an honest way, then they'll care so much less about the bead bag. I think I understand that there is a sensitivity. Some people may be put off by one thing or another, but I think the first thing they're going to look for is like, okay, well, like this person is very genuine.
Yeah.
This person seems real to me. And that gives a strong sense of security, a strong sense of, optimism.
Would you say that when you first went to that program in Old Bridge, there was something that attracted you about the genuineness of the people?
Sure, definitely. Absolutely. It didn't feel like a religious service, really. It felt like there are people here, they're deeply pious, very devotional people, and they're just here as themselves. They're allowing their devotion to flow.
Right.
And that felt amazing for me. And there was stuff going on in that program that at that time, I had no clue what was going on. Someone took my hand and they brought me, because actually in retrospect, I learned, I didn't realize at the time, of course, didn't mean enough to me. I didn't really know what was going on. It was Nityananda Trayodasi.
Oh, okay.
And they were doing Abhishek, bathing Gaura deities. And someone took my hand like, here, come, like, do this.
Oh my God.
And
oh my God.
and I wasn't.
Oh wait, I got a good one for this. Put your headphones on.
Okay. Hold on.
You're gonna like this.
Be ready for this.
Have you heard of Krishna consciousness?
This part is a crazy man.
That's really good.
So they took your hand and
they took my hand and that it was nice to hear your voice also.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, they took my hand and they said like, come here, like do this. This is good. Basically,
Oh my God.
I liked the authenticity of it. To me, it felt like, okay, well, like this is something that they're doing very genuinely. I saw the love with which they were doing it.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, even though I didn't quite get what was going on, I was like, they're doing something right now that is deeply meaningful to them. And they're kind enough that they want to include me in that.
Oh my gosh.
And maybe in some way through their feelings of devotion, I can also experience like the joy of this moment. So it seems like, a lot of the time it's, if we're doing something genuinely and we're allowing our devotion to flow rather than being too nervous. I feel it in my own, I do this program at 26 2nd Avenue.
Oh yeah, tell us about that. You wanted to talk about that.
Well, I try to offer this program at 26 2nd Avenue, and sometimes I also I want to make sure that the people who are there are comfortable.
Right.
So we can think about those things. It's good to think about those things, but I think also, ideally, we're also experiencing the joy of what we're doing, and people can pick up on that, and that is a very powerful way of sharing with people. So at 26 2nd Avenue, it's been very nice. It's been going on, I guess, since April now. I've had this opportunity to facilitate a program once a month. It's just the last Monday of the month usually.
Right.
And it's called Atma, and I did, you know what, so you know acronym, and then there's a backronym.
No, what's a backronym?
Backronym is like where you decide you want to call it Atma, and then you like choose something that can stand for.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a backronym.
Backronym, okay.
So Atma, and what we came up with is ascending through meditative art.
Oh, cool.
Right?
That sounds great.
So it's a chance for people who are creatively inclined, you know, whatever the art form may be, whether it's music, creative writing, poetry, short stories, or visual art, or, you know, whatever it might be, dance.
So you share that.
People who have a particular creative practice that they're really into doing, that it's a space for them to kind of fuse that with their spiritual interest. So people who are kind of spiritual seekers, and they want to let their creative practice be a reflection of like their spiritual exploration, and they also want spiritual topics and things like that to become source material for their art.
Right.
So that's what it is. And like, so everybody comes together once a month, and there's a prompt that gets sent out, just like a few verses or things to read through on a particular topic. And then the idea is that everyone will come to the next gathering with some kind of work in progress or finished whatever, you know, that they did on that topic.
That's so cool.
So it's really nice.
So,
it's so cool to see.
So
what
there's a
people
theme
share.
in what people are sharing based upon the prompts.
Yeah, there's a theme,
That's
and
really
you see
cool.
it kind of filtered through everybody, not only through their perception, but also through the kind of creative work that they do. And it's really nice. So it's a chance to like, and then like naturally that leads to more discussion, because everyone just saw all kinds of creative work about this topic, and then you can kind of delve into it in a different way.
Wow.
And we give each other kind of creative feedback. It's been very nice. It's been very nice, and it's inspiring for me too, because I also have always loved to do creative work.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's been hard to kind of fuse it with the spiritual side. I don't know why that was for me personally. Somehow, it just always felt a little hard to do that, you know, like without kind of like coming up with songs that feel like I'm just like sharing something for verbatim from, you know, what I read, like to kind of filter it in a creative way.
Right.
So it's been great to be able to kind of do that in a group like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool, man. Well, looks like we're coming to the end here.
Wow. It went
But,
fast.
Yeah. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. But any closing remarks? Because devotees listen to this and you know, they get an idea of who you are and things, but maybe you can just give some closing statement or remark or something.
Well,
not to put you on the spot.
no,
But
it's okay. No, I can just offer some gratitude. I'm just very grateful to all of you who are listening, for all that you do, for everything that you have offered, you know, into the world in such a sincere way. And I think the more we get a chance to kind of inspire each other in our endeavors that we're making, we can really connect through that. And so when I meet people,
yeah.
I feel very, very connected with them, because I feel like we're actually, again, it's like that kind of common goal in the heart. So yeah, so as final word, I can just thank everyone, and also thank you.
Come on.
Really, yeah, this is a very positive thing that you're offering, and, you know, getting to, you know, allow people to see the full person of, you know, different people in our community.
Sure, yeah. That's one of my goals, yeah, for sure.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also that we can try to support each other, right? We can try to support each other if we're having challenges in spiritual life, whatever it is, that we try to lean on each other, you know, for honest talks about those things. And
Definitely.
yeah, and this kind of program is really facilitating that as well. So
Thank you, Dina Bandhu.
great.
Appreciate it. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Oh yeah, anyone's welcome to get in touch with me. I don't have Facebook. I do have Instagram.
Oh, you have Instagram. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really post anything very
Yeah, but
much.
they could DM you.
Yeah, it's I should tell it.
Yeah, you can say, yeah.
Yeah, so it's David. It's my name, my birth name, David B, and then Greenberg. So Green, and then Berg. So David B. Greenberg.
David B.
I'm
Greenberg.
on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll put it in the
Always
comments
happy
or
to hear
something.
from anybody. Sure.
Yeah. I'm sure people want to get in touch with you. People are interested in chaplaincy, in hospice thing, and psychiatric
chaplaincy is
things.
something that I think many people in our communities, it could come naturally for a lot of people. I think we should have more people doing that.
Sure, we should have a podcast with all the chaplains on. You and other few devotees who do it in the nearby area. It would be a good episode, I think.
Yeah, that would be really neat. Yeah,
that would be fantastic. We'll appreciate it a lot. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I love to hear it. I could hear so much more. And another thing I want to see is you take up some leadership positions. I want not in a position way as a a leadership position, but you have this natural way of inspiring people. Like I just felt very inspired just to talk to you. Because your positivity is very contagious, and I think that's so important for someone who's a leader, who's a natural leader. I feel that you can get there, and you're there, and you have a lot to offer the Hare Krishna movement. Thank you for
the encouragement.
No problem.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful for the encouragement. Thank you.
No problem. That's episode 24 with Dina Bandhu, and we will leave it off with Vishnu John Swami. Okay, Haribol, take care.
Haribol.